Hi everyone, and welcome back to another TFT Masterclass. Today we are going to be doing a set 12 rundown, talking about the upcoming PB, which will be coming in one day. Before we even get started, we have a coach development program upcoming starting at the very end of July. So what is the coach development program, or CDP? Basically, if you're a coach, a manager, a director, or an analyst, or even just a player, then this is specifically designed for you. This is a Cloud9 4-week coach development program designed to just increase your knowledge of esports and increase your knowledge of how to be a better coach, just how to perform better within your games. So if you're any of these that I listed, like coach, manager, even just a player analyst, then this is definitely for you. This is a university accredited curriculum, and it's definitely a college level course, so be sure to expect just the top-notch quality of content, and it includes 20 hours of live or asynchronous instruction. If this interests you, then definitely check out the link in the description, and you can use my code Upsetmax for $50 off, which is huge. So definitely check this out. The summer session will start at the end of this month. Okay, so let's get straight into today's class. So as I mentioned, today we'll be doing a set 12 rundown, or rather more of a brief introduction into the upcoming sets. This means that today we'll be doing the new set mechanic and talk about the charms and mana / roll banks and what they are. And then we'll go into all of the set 12 traits and finish off with a recap and a Q&A. If you're curious about the dates of when everything is occurring, so on July 16, which is tomorrow, around I think afternoon PST is when PB is scheduled to come up, and then the live implementation of set 12 will be coming at the end of this month. Okay, so let's get straight into it. The new mechanic of set 12 is called charms. So what is charms? Essentially, these charms will appear in your 5th shop slot in place of a unit, and they will provide some sort of effect at some cost. Note that this cost can be 0, or it could go all the way up to like 40, or I think even higher. So these charms will become stronger and also cost more gold as the game goes on, and these charms will start to appear starting on stage 2. So for your stage 1 shops, as you're getting dropped your items and your gold, you will not be seeing any charms and only seeing units. The rule of when they appear is they will appear every other shop, but you can only purchase 1 charm per round. So once you have purchased a charm, let's say at the very start of a round, then no more charms will appear that round, and your 5th shop slot will just be units after you purchase a charm for that round specifically. So those are some rules for how the charms work, and then here are some examples of what they look like. So Moonlight Ritual, for example, this one will cost 1 gold, so this will appear around like stage 2, and then the effect would be like, oh, okay, for your next combat, a random 1 or 2 cost champion stars up. Or later into the game, so I think this is starting around stage 4, let's say Conjure Artifact. Now you can gain an Artifact Anvil, however this costs 20 gold as opposed to 1 gold. So as you can see here, the farther the game goes on and the later the game goes, the more expensive the charms will be, and the stronger they will be as well. So let's continue about this. What exactly can charms provide? So there's a couple different effects that they can. First one is like economic effects. So either like shop refreshes, this can grant you rolls, it could give you gold, it can give you XP. Then there are more of the generic combat effects. So either attack speed for your whole team, attack speed for a specific unit, shielding for your units, or even gaining a target dummy. Moving on, there's tactician health effects. So you can either buy a charm that will help you gain or lose HP for a specific expense. So for example, like, oh, pay 4 HP but get three free rolls, something like that, or even a gain / lose HP dependent on the round outcome. Moving on to the couple last ones. So there are trait related charms as well. So Chrono is a new trait of set 12. So there is charms that affect the Chrono's attack speed, or even Dragons, which is also a new trait. Like Dragons will deal a percentage of true damage. So there are definitely trait related charms. And then last but not least, there are item related charms where you can pay a specific amount of gold to either gain a component or even an artifact, as you've seen on the last slide, or even gain a random uncraftable emblem. Be sure to check out, I will probably provide a link in the description for all of the set 12 updates, but you can definitely check out the entire list of available charms just to get you an idea of what to expect. I will warn you, there are a lot of charms, so definitely get ready for PBE to just start absorbing information so then you can be all set to go when the set drops live. That is the first mechanic of the new set. There's another one that is less talked about. It's going to be about mana banks or banking mana. So what is this essentially? Well, units will now, the excess mana of units will now carry over to the next cast after their initial cast. So what does this mean? So for example, let's take a unit such as Seraphine, right? If you have a Spear of Shojin on her, then normally, well, even Spear of Shojin on anyone, because now you're getting 15 mana per auto attack, so 10 plus 5, that will normally bring you to a cap pool or a mana pool of 75 after 5 auto attacks, assuming we're from 0, right? So what does this mean? So normally you would lose that last 5 mana, right? So if your ability to cast only requires 70, however, after you attack 5 times, you get up to 75, then this 5 mana would previously, in previous sets, be lost. However, now with the new mana banking mechanic, after the initial cast, the unit will now start at 5 mana working towards their next cast. So let's take Seraphine as a direct example, 70 mana, right? She starts with 10, and then let's say we build a Spear of Shojin on her. Now we're at 25. After we do our initial cast, then if there's any banked up mana, which in this case I don't believe there is, because 25, 40, 55, 70, there will be no banked up mana. However, starting from her next cast, 0 to 70 would be this direct example, where you would attack 5 times. Normally, you'd get up to 75 and then lose that 5. However, on her third cast, you will now start at 5 mana. So what does this mean? It means that it's just going to be much more efficient rotations of casts from mages, or just even caster units in general, especially with Spear of Shojin. So that's the first more hidden mechanic. And then the second more hidden mechanic is banking of rolls, or rolls bank. So there's a lot of augments or charms that give you free rerolls. Now these rerolls will bank, so you can use them whenever you want instead of that turn only. So if you played this previous set 11, you may have noticed there were some encounters where like, gain 3 or gain 4 rerolls for this round specifically. So now any occurrence of free rerolls will bank, and you will be able to see an indicator on the rerolls button in your bottom left GUI. So that's the next one. We're now going to go on to the traits. So we talked about a couple of the new mechanics. We talked about charms. We talked about how the new mana is banking over after each cast, and then also about the rolling banking. Now we're going to move on to the traits and just take your time to go one by one what to expect. So the first one, Arcana, we have Ashe, Hecarim, Tahm Kench, and Xerath. I know since it's going to be new icons of the units, it will take a little bit of time to get used to them. However, the more you play the game and the more you're just available for set 12, you'll start to recognize them much more. So the way Arcana works, it is a 2, 3, 4, 5 breakpoint with these 4 units. And then depending on, you will, as soon as you activate this trait, you will get a little, let's say this is your bench, or your item bench, you'll get a little like insignia or like signifier, and then you can just place it on a specific Arcana champion to activate their specific ability. So for example, if we activate it or place it onto Ari, this is not an actual item, so it does not remain on the units. It's kind of similar to just any, like, even, I'm trying to think of one right now. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but it's not an actual item. It's more just of a selector. Then your team will gain some sort of bonus of that specific unit. So if it's on Ari, then your Ari gains AP, which you'll gain more AP based off of how many 3-star champions you have. If you have the insignia or signifier on Hecarim, then champions holding an item gain durability, which is also known as damage reduction, or an attack damage. So this is equipping items. And then Tahm Kench is for activating traits and HP. And then last but not least, Xerath is dealing bonus true damage based off how many charms you bought. So a little bit more of a complicated trait. It'll make more sense once you play PvE, but definitely play around with the signifier item and test different Arcana units, and you'll be able to see the resulting effects. Chrono is a new trait, so not only will Chronos gain bonus ability power, as soon as combat starts, there's a 16-second countdown, which actually increases, or I guess it speeds up by 1 second after each Chrono ability cast. Once this countdown reaches 0, you will gain a specific effect depending on what breakpoint of Chrono you have. So the two breakpoints is your team will restore 20% health, and then Chronos gain more AP. The 4 breakpoint, I would say, is the main one, where you freeze combat time for 2.5 seconds, where your chronos continue to fight and they also gain extra ability power. So this is really going to be powerful if you're able to get 4 chrono in. Just that 2.5 seconds is super important, especially mid to late game where every second counts. And then last but not least, on the 6th breakpoint, your chronos will gain extra attack speed and your entire team heals 100% of health instead. Moving on to dragons. So dragon is a little bit of a more unique one. It has a 2 and a 3 breakpoint. However, something to note, Namzi, Shyvana are 1 and 2 costs. However, Smolder is a legendary 5 cost. So there is a huge gap of no 3 and 4 costs for this dragon trait. So it's very interesting. We're going to see how this plays out in specific comps. However, 2 dragon, not only will the dragon's attacks and abilities burn, but they'll also wound enemies. And then once you reach 3 dragon, each one of these units have a specific special ability that will become activated. Druid, if you played monsters attack, is similar to threats. So the one druid in this full set is Wukong. So he doesn't have a trait bonus and instead just has a powerful ability, increased stats. So that's all. This is essentially just threats. However, this is just one threat. Eldritch, it's the new summon trait of set 12. So this is basically comparable to the previous Story Weaver. I would say it's more close to cultists if you played in set 4.5. Basically, once your team loses 20% health, you will now summon this old god, which is basically just a summon, and then it gains HP and AP depending on your Eldritch's total star levels. So you can see here, the 3 traits is the Tainting Golem, so it'll fly in, do nothing on the initial fly in. However, on its cast, will deal magic damage to the target it's hitting and adjacents and stunning them. Dark Monolith is going to be the 5 breakpoint of Eldritch, and now on arrival, not only will it stun all adjacent enemies, now the cast is a little bit more intricate, where it will deal damage to the target, all adjacent enemies, and then for 4 seconds, it will have some chain lightning. And then the 7 breakpoint, also known as the Many-Eyed Beast, will stun all enemies within 2 hexes. Attacks will also chain lightning 4 times to nearby enemies. And then the active will deal a ton of damage to enemies near the target and gain attack speed. The 10 breakpoint is a secret. If you have seen the trailer for set 12, then I believe it is in there, but it's kind of a giant bear that just takes over the entire board. All right, moving on to fairies. So fairies has a 2, 4, 6, and 9 breakpoint with 7 total units. Not only will the fairies gain health, but they have 2 specific items that you could play around that can only be placed on fairy units. So by just activating 2 to 4, you will gain a fairy crown, which you could place on, remember, only your fairy units. It's kind of like a Titan's. After you deal damage 12 times, then you will gain 25% damage amp for the rest of the combat. So you want to be placing this on a fairy unit that does damage, so not a tank. So you wouldn't be placing this on Eulalia. You'd rather place it on like your Seraphine early game. And then once you reach 6 fairy, you'll also gain Queen's Guard armor. So now this item will gain 30% increased healing and shielding, and you'll also heal for 12% of the Queen's damage dealt. So I'm assuming that if you do get to 6 fairy, since the 2 4 cost carries are Callista, which is a backline AD carry, and then Rakan is more of a tank, I'm assuming that you're going to be putting the fairy crown on the Callista and then the armor on the Rakan, and they will just benefit off each other, kind of like a Xayah Rakan situation. However, there's no Xayah here. Moving on, Frost. Frost champions gain AP and AD. Now the main thing about this trait is once you kill an enemy unit, that enemy unit will become an allied ice soldier. And the soldiers have 300 HP per stage, I'm assuming starting on stage 2. And it sounds like these soldiers will taunt the enemy and then is essentially just like extra frontline and also a retarget. Once you get to the 7 and 9 breakpoints, these soldiers will also explode on death. Honeymancy. You've definitely seen this from any set 12 trailer. It's the honey trait. If you have played previous laser core compositions, this is essentially the same coding where honeymancers will have bees. So this is like previous drones that deal magic damage to the target every couple of seconds, and the bees deal more damage depending on how much the actual honeymancer's damage deals, and then also for some of the damage that they take. One of the main parts is once a Honeymancer dies, so let's say a frontline Honeymancer like a Blitzcrank, then the Blitzcrank's bee will leave the dead Blitzcrank and then follow nearby Honeymancers for the rest of combat. So your last Honeymancer surviving in like the corners, like a ranged unit, let's say like a Vagar, will have a ton of bees if all of the other Honeymancers have already died. It's a pretty cool trait. Moving on to Portal, so also a new trait in set 12, combat start. For 15 seconds, the Portal champions will be shielded for a certain percentage. This is a 3, 6, 8, and then 10 breakpoint. And then the main part of this ability is depending on your breakpoint, you'll summon a particular shield or a particular portal, which also becomes stronger for each portal champion's star level. So this sounds like a reroll trait or can be a reroll trait. And then objects will fly in from the portal and assist your allies and disrupt enemies. Pyro, so not only will your entire team gain 3% attack speed, Pyro champions in particular also gain more attack speed on top of that and have it execute for enemies under 15% health. So this is a pure combat trait. For each kill, so this is team kill, not specific to the actual Pyro champions, your Pyro champions will create Infernal Cinders, where every 4 cinder you have, your team gains 1% more attack speed. So this is a really strong trait if you're able to tech this in early and start stacking up these Infernal Cinders. That way, for the mid to late game, you will have a ton of attack speed and your Pyro units will be able to pop off, with your main damage dealer being your Varus and your main tank being your Nasus. Ravenous is a unique trait to Briar, which he gains bonus percent damage amp for the lower player health you are. And then something fun that you can do is you can give her a light snack for 3 HP, and this will increase her health by 150. So if Briar is holding items for your team, then definitely be giving her light snacks if you have the HP to afford, and every round she will get stronger and stronger. Sugarcraft is the modern day 8-bit. So once you want to get Sugarcraft as early in as possible, and instead of the 8-bit or the sugar cake like increasing based off how much damage you're dealing, it will increase based off how many components your team is holding after combat. The actual trait will give you attack damage and AP, increased by 10% for each cake layer. And then once your cake reaches 7 layers, you'll gain some bonus treats instead, which I think are like items and gold, depending on how much of your breakpoints of Sugarcraft you have. And then last but not least for the section, Witchcraft, a little bit more of a complicated one. So your Witch's ability will apply curses to the enemies that they target. When a cursed enemy dies, that curse will spread to the nearest enemy. So what are these curses? At 2 Witchcraft, cursed enemies will not only become smaller, but they lose 200 of their max HP. At 4 Witchcraft, they will also, so these are all stacking effects, not just one or the other, they will also turn green and heal your lowest health witch for 15% of your bonus of your damage taken. And then at 6 Witchcraft, which is the last reasonable or feasible breakpoint to hit, they will also become frail, and witches will deal 25% bonus true damage to these cursed targets. Since there are only 6 Witchcraft units, this is the last breakpoint that you'll normally hit, and if you're able to hit 8 with 2 extra spats, they will also turn into a frog, get stunned for 2 seconds, every 8 seconds, and then all of these other curse effects are increased by 50%. So a little bit complicated, but definitely a really cool trait and something to look out for if you have the spots. So moving on to the second half, Ascendant. So Xerath is Xerath's unique trait. And the way this works is once you field Xerath, this will affect the charm in your 5th shop slots. And these will be more powerful charms. They're called Ascendant charms. The odds of these Ascendant charms increase by 10% after each player combat, up to 50%. However, once you buy one, the odds will reset. Bastion is one of the tank traits of set 12, so not only will your team gain 10 resistances, so of armor and magic resist, but the bastions themselves will gain more, and the value doubles in the first 10 seconds of combat, which means for bastions, you definitely want to be placing them on the outsides of your board, so near the corners. So then let's say if this is your board, this is the enemy boards, the enemy backline carries will attack them first, where they have the increased resistances for the first 10 seconds of combat. If you're able to get to 8 Bastion, very cool. There's a special effect where 2 champs starting combat in the back 2 rows are invulnerable until 4 Bastions die. Bat Queen, this is going to be one of the legendaries, so Morgana, that you want to tech in as early as possible, especially if you get her on level 7. When the Morgana Bat kills an enemy, you have a chance of taking a 1-star copy of that specific unit. So it's basically free gold if you're able to high roll this unit early. However, there are still some applications of this unit late game where you're also just getting free gold from the enemy. Best Friends is another unique trait. However, this is from the new unit, Nora and Yumi. So once you buy Nora, well, I guess they're together. Once you field Nora, Yumi will appear, and you can, similar to faded attachments, you can pick up the Yumi and hover her over the ally that you want the Yumi to go on, and then the Yumi will share. Yumi also shares her ability power with Nora and dies when Nora dies as well. I believe the shared stats that Yumi gives to the actual to the trait is either percentage bonus damage increase or healing or attack speed. It's one of these. Moving on, Blaster is pure combat trait. This is going to be just damage amp. So 2, 4, and 6 breakpoints. Normally, the blasters will gain X percentage of damage amp already. However, once they cast their ability, they will gain increased damage amp as well while they are casting their ability. Hunter is very simple, it's just pure attack damage. So it's kind of similar to Blaster, they'll have regular X amount of attack damage just regularly. However, after they get their first takedown in the combat, they will gain more attack damage. So these are pretty simple traits. Encounter is a little bit more of a complicated one. So not only will your team gain 10% or a 10 ability power, this is a stacking/stalling trait. So whenever encounters attack, or at least their every other attack, they will grant 1 stack up to 40, and each ability cast also grants 3 stacks. And the more they stack up, the more ability power they will get, depending on if you have 2 encounter or 4 encounter. So this is pretty good. I think you're going to be wanting to carry Karma late game, especially with a mana pool of 30. You'll be able to cast a lot and get these stacks up quite high. Mage, this is a returning trait. They will cast twice and have modified total ability power. Multi-Strikers is the new Blade Master, where your Multi-Strikers attacks have a chance to trigger 2 extra attacks, and then at the 7 and 9 breakpoints, they will also heal on every attack. And getting to the end, Preserver is a team-wide trait. Your team will heal a percent of their max health every 3 seconds, so similar to Mascot. If they're full health, they will restore mana instead. And then Preservers gain double this amount. Scholar is similar to the mana generation trait of the actual set. However, instead of invokers of receiving mana every couple of seconds, Scholars, their mana gen is similar to like a built-in Shojin. So like 2 Scholar will, when Scholars auto attack, they will gain 3 extra mana per attack. Same with 4. So 4 is essentially a built-in Shojin for all Scholars. And then at 6, this is more than a Shojin. This is like Radiant Shojin. Something to note is this Scholar trait is selfish. So this is not a team-wide trait where your entire team is gaining bonus mana on attack. Shapeshifters, super cool. So the shapeshifters gain bonus health, bonus max health, and then after their first cast, they triple this effect. And then these last 2 ones, Vanguards. So Vanguards gain 10% damage reduction. So remember, durability is the new wording for damage reduction while they are shielded. And then to work with this at the combat start and at 50% HP, they will gain a shield based off of a percentage of their max health for 10 seconds. So this works out together very well. And then last but not least, Warriors, they will gain Omnivamp and Damage Amp. So no attack damage here, simply just Omnivamp and Damage Amp. And then once the Warriors drop below 40% HP or 40% health, they will gain double that damage amplification. So that has been everything for the traits. Definitely, if I know it's a lot of information to take in, so definitely take your time to take it in and either check this out once it is uploaded on YouTube or check out the actual traits on like Texas.tools or like Mobalytics to fully understand everything before PB comes out tomorrow. Here is a little infographic that Riot released regarding the times. So remember, PB starts out tomorrow. A tip is make sure to have the actual PB client downloaded and ready to log in. This will be around like 12 to 1 p.m. PST based off of the information given. Some other way to check when PB is up, if you don't want to just be like just waiting around, either check like Mortdog's Twitter for his current posts, or if you just go on Twitch and you see any popular streamer playing like PB, or the title is like PB is up, and you click on it and they're actually playing, well then PB is up. So super excited. I hope everyone is excited to play tomorrow. I guess I'll do a quick recap really quick, and then that'll be it for today. So we did a quick rundown into set 12. The first one is we talked about a couple of the new set mechanics. So charms is the new set mechanic, kind of similar to encounters, but more it's like shop related and you have a little bit more autonomy. They will get stronger and they cost more the longer the game goes. The next one is green mana banks, so just more efficient rotations of spell casts from your units, especially with items such as Spear of Shojin. And then roll banks, your rolls will continue to bank up together and you don't have to use them right away after getting a specific augment or charm. So I'll end it there. That has been everything for today. And we're going to now enter a Q&A for those who are watching this live in the Training Grounds Discord. And I hope to see you there. The next class will be on Thursday, and that will be talking about 5 easy comps to play on PBE. So then you can worry less about what composition to play and worry more about what the units look like, what the units do, items, and charms. Thank you so much, and have